That's where all the money is made. Sure, you make money in gold and silver coins and bullion, and it's good, but not like you would make in gold and silver shares. And the reason why is it does not cost relatively more to produce an ounce of gold, whether gold is $1,300 an ounce or $2,600 an ounce or $5,000 an ounce. So there's inherent tremendous leverage in the shares because of the underlying cost factor. I used to be the largest gold-silver stockbroker in the world for 28 years, so I know what I'm talking about. I've seen hundreds of stocks go from 50 cents to $50 and $3 and $4 and $500. Whether that'll happen again remains to be seen. But when you have a deflationary or an inflationary depression, we have an inflationary right now, and the dollar is faltering, and stock markets and bond markets are going down, there's no place else to go but to gold and silver, bullion, coins, and shares, or commodities. And commodities is a very difficult market for people to make money in unless they really know what they're doing.
We have somebody out there that might know what they're doing. At least they're seeking a little advice. The question is, Mine Finders had a release that they had a rip in their leach pad. Will this cause a loss in the next 2 quarters?
The answer is no. And everybody who had any brains whatsoever knew that they had a rip in their pad over 2 months ago. So it was not big news. But they came out and said the fixing is going to be delayed, and the reason why is because they had very heavy rains. Now, the stock dropped 10%, and it should have never done so. Why did it do that? Because the naked shorts, which includes your government, attacked the stock and knocked it down so they could buy it back cheaper. That's what went on, and that's what caused the drop in the stock. So what do? Nothing fundamentally has changed with the company, except they had a rip in their pants. So you go in and buy the stock because these idiots knocked it down. That's what you do.
Good question. Mr. Chapman, not since the 1930s has it been witnessed that nations around the world are controlling, manipulating their currency. Do you see this as a warning to those of us that have eyes to see that a coming collapse is about to be worldwide and not just in a few countries?
It's certainly going to be worldwide, and the damage will vary from country to country. Right now, Canada is doing good. They don't have the problems America's got. The other countries I just mentioned earlier in the program are in dreadful shape. The U.S. is in dreadful shape. Didn't talk about England. They're in horrible shape. And there's many other countries in terrible shape. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, the Ukraine, Bulgaria, Romania, just to name a few. On the other hand, Mexico is going to have 7.5% growth this year, and they didn't use any stimulus. And their inflation's only 3.5%. And that's what they admit there. They tell the truth, if you can believe that. And so it's going to vary from country to country. It all depends on where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chapman, how bad do you feel is it going to hit those of us that live here in India?
Well, India's got a population problem, always has had, And there's a lot of poor people in India. And I think what we're going to have coming is tariffs in the United States. And that's going to raise havoc with the Indian economy. Even though they do a lot of business in Asia, their electronics and software businesses are going to suffer. All those call centers, they'll end up shutting them down. They'll probably still manufacture automobiles, but not to the extent that they did before. So on a scale of 10, 10 being worst, that's the U.S. and England and the 5 countries I've mentioned, plus the other ones. There's about 20 of them in serious trouble. They'll all be 10s. Canada, Australia, Norway, Switzerland, they'll all be 3s or 4s. Mexico, probably a 6. India, probably a 7 or 8, just like China. Maybe worse, I don't know. But at the moment, I'll say a 7 or an 8.
Oh, where's that question?
No one's going to escape this. Believe me. It's going to be worldwide, and
yeah,
it's going to be
go ahead,
nasty. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, Mr. Chapman, what would happen if the government if any government decides to confiscate their gold?
They'll probably get overthrown.
Including the
Any
United
country.
States?
I mean, people are not going to tolerate that. I mean, most countries in the world, people can have guns, but they're very limited in how they can have them. But in America, they're trying to slide something through right now to register weapons. And it's in Saturday's issue. And it's chapter and verse on how they're going to do it. And it's already in motion. And that could cause a revolution in the United States. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to be in Washington.
No. Mr. Chapman...
In fact, I wouldn't want to be in the Pentagon, of all places.
Oh, no. Definitely not there. The only people, believe it or not, Mr. Chapman, I was talking to a Marine security guard that went over and visited the Pentagon, and he said that with all the entrances that they have, there's only, from what he could tell, there's only about 78 guns in the entire building.
Well, that makes them sitting ducks. And they got the highest crime rate in the country in Washington, D.C. And, of course, you can't have guns here, but everybody's got them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I go through 36 newspapers a day in 5 languages. And, you know, we get the highlights from them. And the crime in major American cities is unbelievable. They say the crime rate's down. Well, you know, I can pick up Phoenix or Boston or Miami or Los Angeles, and they have, you know, 20, 30 murders a night. And so I don't believe the crime rate is falling because, you know, in places like New York City and Boston, you're not supposed to have guns. But everybody's got them.
Mr. Chapman, do you feel that the Federal Reserve is really out of control with what's going on?
They sure are, and not only that, they have lost control. They're never going to be able to revive this thing. And so, by being on the air and pointing out to all the listeners on the 25 or 30 hours of programming I do every week, and publishing, which goes to millions and millions of people throughout the world, both the shows as well as the publishing, the whole world's finding out the truth about who's doing what to them and why they're doing it. And so this kind of information leads to revolution. If the people don't do the right thing, for the public. In fact, I was just mentioned in a major article in Vanity Fair. The writer, Mike Lewis, went to Greece, and he went to see the head of the Orthodox Church, or one of the more important people, and they started talking about what's going on. And Mike says to the fellow who he was interviewing, he said, "Well, how do you know so much about this?" He says, "Well, our advisor is the international forecaster, Bob Chapman." So it's in Vanity Fair. So I've become an international notorious character.
Mr. Chapman, yesterday the European banks have halted gold sales, and with the fact that they're not selling any gold, is that the reason gold prices are going up now that the Chinese have started buying gold at just about any price?
Well, for the last 10 years, they've been selling anywhere between 400 and, I'll say 350 and 500 tons. And in the last 2 years, except for what Switzerland had left to sell, because they sold off half of what they had at extremely lower prices, the idiots, and all the rest of the idiots, central banks who sold, because all was to suppress the price. And they were unsuccessful. And they allowed millions and millions of people to buy gold cheap, and it's still cheap. Anyway, this past year, I think they sold 6,000 tons, which is nothing. And I think the IMF has sold 106 tons, and they're going to sell another, maybe 30 tons or something like that, and they're all through. The reason they're not selling is they know the price is going up, and if they have financial problems, and the public says, "Well, how much gold you got?" and they say, "Well, we don't have any left, or we got very little," I mean, they're going to hang these people. I mean, 10 years ago, was it 10? 1999. 11 years ago, over a 2-year period, the British sold off half of their gold at an average price of $275 an ounce. If I was British, I'd take that idiot who sold it, who became Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, I'd take him out and hang him. I mean, they lost, I don't know, $12 billion, and we don't know what they did with the rest of it because I think they leased it all. And so the losses are probably $25 billion. I mean, the public has really gotten screwed in some of these countries.
Yeah, that's true.
And of course, while they were selling, I was buying.
To highlight your comment about the crime in Washington, D.C., today there was four individuals boosted an armored truck in downtown D.C. today. Unknown amount. I'm waiting for a link to come in to tell me how much money, if it's even mentioned. But that tells me that people are getting brazen around the United States that are really hard up, and the criminals are starting to get together and steal everything they can.
Well, you know what's interesting? They tell you about all the crime in Mexico. And the only crime in Mexico is between the government and the narcotraficantes, and the narcotraficantes themselves trying to cut in on each other's business. And most of it's along the border or in Sinaloa. Occasionally you see some in Guerrero, where Acapulco is, and occasionally in Monterrey. And other than that, there is no crime. I mean, they steal cars once in a while, and the breaking and entering. You never see stores getting robbed hardly. And if they are, they're little ones. You never see banks being robbed. And one of the reasons why is outside the bank, there's a guy in uniform with a submachine gun. I mean, if you want to die, you came to the right place, you know. And so there's far, far more crime in America than almost any place else in the world.